This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm Mac Pritchard, your host and publisher of Mac's List. Our show is brought to you by Mac's List and by our book, Land Your Dream Job in Portland and Beyond. To learn more about the book and the new edition that we're publishing February 1st, please visit maxlist.org/ebook. Whatever career you choose, you'll find competitors. No matter how small or crowded your field may be, some people always stand out in your profession. Education, experience, and other advantages play a part in these people's success, but how you lead your work life can make a huge difference too. This week on Find Your Dream Job, we're talking about how you can advance your career by combining your strengths with the complementary skills of others. Our guest expert this week is Kare Anderson. She and I will talk about specific steps you can take in your professional life to break out of the pack. Ben Forstag has several online tools you can use to improve your teamwork skills, and Cecilia Bianco tackles a question that comes up in every workplace. Should you hire family and friends? We're here in the Mac's List studio, and I'm here with Cecilia and Ben. First of all, Ben, welcome back from your paternity leave.
Thank you.
Yes, congratulations on the new son.
Thank you. Little Fox, as we call him, is doing very well.
Fox. I love that acronym.
Off.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you back. Now, when you two think about peers you've had either at school or in the workplace or elsewhere who've stood out, what have you seen them do?
Well, I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is how engaged someone is in their field. If someone's really focused on attending events, workshops, and joining the right groups for their career, I think that goes a long way to making them stand out.
One thing that I've seen that I really like is people who maintain active and high-quality blogs. And I think this is so important because it shows a dedication. This is something you do weekly or on a regular basis. It positions you as a subject matter expert, regardless of how big or small that subject is. It's quite notable when you are the subject matter expert on it. And third, it is a showcase for good quality writing. And I think those things are so important. And it's just a great way to position yourself with employers and other professional prospects.
And I think the common denominator that runs through both of the examples that you two have shared, and they're great examples, is a topic that our guest is going to talk about this week, which is the importance of giving to others. And she has a book that we'll talk about, Mutuality. But the idea is this, that by helping others and being part of a community, whether it's by running a blog or participating in professional groups or going to events, you're giving of yourself and you're thinking about the needs of others and how you can help. But first, let's turn to you, Ben. I know you have a resource for our listeners this week. What have you found?
So this week I want to share 3 blog posts all about the importance of teamwork. And when I say that word, I know some people are rolling their eyes and other people are getting great big smiles. Teamwork is one of these cliched words that really divides people. What do you think, Cecilia? Are you a teamwork person or a work alone person?
I'm more of a teamwork person. I think, as you said, it's become really important in today's work market. Almost all of our listings have that listed as a qualification. How do you work on a team?
Yeah, I enjoy teamwork too. And I have to say, when I was in graduate school, I got a lot out of that experience. But one of the most important gifts I got was they had us work in study groups. And I had not done that as an undergraduate. And that gave me the experience to work with others and help others in the group. And I found I got a lot more out of my education as a result.
I'm of two minds when it comes to teamwork. Part of me really sees the value in it, and it's undeniable that this is a skill that employers are looking for. I would guess that 95% of every job description that we get here at Mac's List includes teamwork as one of the things they're looking for. At the same time, when I was in graduate school, team projects were always those projects where I thought, oh man, now I've got to do extra work to cover up for other people. And so, it's something that I'm always working on and I know I can improve on. And that's why I thought this was an interesting topic. It also feeds into what we talked about earlier about working with others and giving to others in a team environment. So the first post I want to share comes from the Lifehack blog, and it's called The 10 Things That Good Team Players Do Differently. As Cecilia mentioned, terms like teamwork and team player are often use so much they lose all of their meaning. And I really like this post because it outlines some basic behaviors that make someone a good team participant. Here are the 10 attributes of team players according to the blog. They're reliable. They are unafraid of failure. They share information. They say what they think. They don't dominate meetings. They stay positive. They understand and respect team dynamics. They know when to say no. They are adept at problem solving. And they go the extra mile. This all sounds great, Mac, right? This is exactly the kind of person you want to hire.
Right.
Yeah, if I had any criticism of this blog piece, it might be that this sounds like the ideal person. A good team player is just a great listener and does everything right. But I do like it because they are kind of concrete things to think about and how you behave in the office and how you work with your colleagues. Just things to keep in the back of your mind about how you could improve your relations and your productivity with others. If you heard that list and you thought, like, that doesn't sound like me at all, my next resource is for you. This is a post entitled The Introvert's Guide to Surviving Teamwork, and it comes from the Psychology Today blog. As I mentioned earlier, I actually consider myself something of an introvert, and I know how difficult it can be to assert yourself in a group setting. And I like this post because it outlines some mindsets and skill sets and deliberative practices you can use to become an effective team leader. The general idea here is that introverts play an essential role in effective teams. You're needed for the team to be effective. And the role you play as an introvert is being the level-headed listener, the aggregator of good ideas, and the implementer of group decisions. I love this quote from the blog. The author writes, "Extroverts love to talk, but are much less enthused about having to walk away and do the work. This is the introvert's chance to shine. You can be the one who puts your hand up and to work on a project offline." And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind because teamwork requires all kinds of different kinds of people. And if it's just a bunch of talkers, nothing's going to get done. Lastly, I want to share a blog for how you can talk about your teamwork skills with a prospective employer. And as I was thinking about this subject yesterday, it really struck me that what a challenge it is to illustrate your skills as a team player in the interview process. Right? Because in most of the things we're doing in an interview is trying to show how great you're, like the number one guy, you're the expert in everything, you have all the answers. And teamwork is not one of these skills where being the guy with all the answers is an asset, right? That's often a liability. And so this post had some interesting answers on how you can answer behavioral questions related to teamwork. It comes from the biginterview.com blog, and I'll have the URLs for all these blog posts in the show notes. It's a very long post, but it includes some sample interviews, questions around teamwork, discusses why employers are asking these questions, and provides some strategies on how you can best answer these questions in a way that shows the skills you have as a team player without bragging, without going over the top, and really presenting yourself as an ideal candidate for their needs.
Your point about focusing on behavioral interview questions, I think, is really important because if you're trying to act like a team player in an interview, the best way to do that is through examples. So being prepared with examples that show you're a team player is a great way to go.
And I think your point, too, Ben, about how in interviews there's a tendency to try to please the prospective employer by saying, I can do everything and I'm a star in everything. And I think smart employers know that they're not going to get 100% of everything that's in a job description, and a candidate can't do everything. And I think it's important for candidates to remember that because if they are hired, they will be part of a team and they will have strengths that they can bring to that group. But they can't do everything. And if they're managers themselves or they become managers one day, they're going to recognize the value of being able to identify strengths in others and draw people out in those strengths and give them opportunities to display them.
Yeah, and really that's the value of teamwork, essentially. It's a way to maximize people's strengths and cover up their weaknesses by combining compatible strengths and collaborating that way. Before I leave, I just want to share this one awesome quote that I came across. It's about the value of teamwork, and this comes from Bill Gates. And he said, creativity is less of an individual characteristic than it is an emergent property that surfaces when people convene around a problem. And I think that's kind of gets at the heart of why most employers nowadays want you to be a good team player, because it helps you come up with unique, good solutions to problems that individuals by themselves can't figure out.
Yeah, and I think together a team is stronger and an organization is better for it. Well, thank you, Ben. Ben is always looking for suggestions, and he's always thrilled when he hears from people who have ideas for him. So please write him. You can reach him at ben@maxlist.org. Now let's turn to you, our listeners. It's time to hear from Cecilia Bianco, our community manager, and she's going to reach deep and far into the mailbag and pull out this week's question. Cecilia, what do you have for us this week?
Well, actually, our question this week came from Twitter, not the mailbag. And it's, is it a bad idea to accept a job working for or with family members or friends? What should I consider before accepting? So I've personally worked at a family business, and I know it can definitely create tension among other employees, and there's a lot to consider and talk about before you accept a job. So the most important thing you can do is set boundaries with the family member or friend before you actually take the job. Ben, I know you've worked with family before too. What ground rules did you have in place to make it a successful experience?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I was working at a nonprofit, and my father actually got hired by the nonprofit as a consultant to do some sales work for them. It was a tense situation, but we made it work, and mostly because we had a couple informal rules. One of them was when he started, I made it clear that I had no managerial authority over him, and he had no managerial authority over me. We worked in two separate departments and had two separate people that we reported to, which helped. I also removed myself from pretty much any decision that had to do with what he was doing. And you're not always able to do this in an organization. Fortunately, in the organization I was with, there were enough other people that could pick up the slack, and I could step out of some conversations simply because I just didn't want to be involved with that piece. And then the third one, and I think this is the most important, is I made a deal with my father. We weren't going to talk about work when we weren't at work. I think it's important to have a work life and a private life. And if your private life turns into kind of a second work life because all the same people are in both camps, you lose that area to decompress and to relax. Off hours, we didn't talk about work. If you had a complaint about work or I had a complaint about work, we didn't talk about it to each other. We just kind of pretended that didn't exist. So it was a unique situation, and we made it work. I think it really depends on your own specific circumstances, though, of whether it's a viable option.
Right. Those are all great suggestions. I think the most important main thing to consider is if you're confident that you and the family member or friend in question can treat each other as you would any other coworker or boss. Knowing everything you know about them, as I'm sure you know your father very well, are you going to be able to put aside that knowledge and treat them unbiasedly, especially once office conflict comes up or any situations arise? You want to be able to treat them like you would a coworker that you haven't known your whole life. Mac, have you ever worked with a family member?
I have. My dad had rental properties for many years, and he would hire my brother and I think my sisters as well, to paint apartments, move tenants, and put up wallpaper. So I wasn't good at any of those things. My sister Katie is a star at wallpaper, and she is still papering walls decades later. We all had jobs, but we tended to, after a stint with my dad, work in restaurants or in other places.
Okay, so was it a good experience or a bad?
It was a good experience. He was basically a small business owner running his rental properties, and being part of that, going with him, watching him work with tenants, deal with leases, purchase properties, work with realtors. He brought us all along, and we got to watch that firsthand and participate in it. And I think we learned some valuable lessons as a result.
Right. So in that situation, it sounds like it was beneficial because you were probably given a little bit more opportunity to learn since it was your father who was the boss rather than maybe another boss.
Yeah, I certainly learned from my other jobs in high school and college, but I think a family member is always going to take more of an interest in a relative, a child or other relative. And many families, I think, want to see their kids succeed in that business as well, and so they want to make that happen.
Right, that makes sense. So two different situations, but the same answer. It's okay to accept a job from a family member. Our main point of advice is just to sit down and get those ground rules in place and make sure you're on the same page about how you want the work relationship to go.
Well, thanks, Cecilia. If you've got a question for Cecilia, you can send it to her via Twitter and also by email. Her email address is cecilia@maxlist.org. Cecilia, for the benefit of our listeners who are on Twitter, how can they reach you via your Twitter handle?
Yeah, they can tweet at max_list, or they can tweet me personally at Cecilia MF Bianco.
These segments by Ben and Cecilia are sponsored by the 2016 edition of our book, Land Your Dream Job in Portland and Beyond. We're taking the complete Max List guide and making it even better. We're adding new content, and we're publishing the book on multiple e-reader platforms. There's a new version of the book coming in February of this year, February 1st, actually. And for the first time, you'll be able to access Land Your Dream Job in Portland and Beyond on your Kindle, your Nook, your iPad, and other digital devices. Up till now, it's just been available as a PDF. And now, for the first time, you'll be able to get a paperback edition. Whatever the format, our goal is the same, to give you the tools and tips you need to get meaningful work. To learn more, go to our website, visit maxlist.org/ebook, and you can sign up for our ebook newsletter. We're sending out publication updates now, and we're sharing exclusive book content, and we're also providing pre-sale prices that are available right now. Let's turn to this week's guest expert. Kare Anderson is a public speaker, author of Mutuality Matters and other books, and an Emmy Award-winning NBC and Wall Street Journal reporter who now writes for Forbes and Huffington Post. Kare's TED Talk, called The Web of Humanity, Becoming an Opportunity Maker, has attracted more than 1.7 million views. Her diverse set of clients includes Salesforce, Novartis, and the Skoll Foundation. Kare, thanks for joining us.
I'm honored. We share an interest in making our work serve the greater good.
I appreciate having that bond with you. And I've been very impressed reading your blog over the years about your writing about the importance of human connection and how much it matters to us all and what a difference it can make in our careers. And one of the topics that you've addressed is how people can stand out in their job search, at work, or in their career by making the most of their social connections. Tell us more about that, Kare.
I believe it not only makes your life more nourishing, but you stand out when you cultivate relationships with people who have adjacent talents to yours, and when you cite and praise the thought leaders and the people in your line of work, your profession, your industry, your company. Whenever you shine a spotlight, specifically praising people for actions they took, especially in front of people who matter to them, you shine too. And I think people notice you. And it's always nice to have people offer you a job before you're looking for it, even if you don't want it. And that's one way to do that.
And I think many people hope that will happen that someone will approach them and offer them a job. And that might happen by posting a resume or a profile on LinkedIn or getting in touch with an executive recruiter, and they just have to sit back and wait for that call. But in your writing, you have a different perspective. You say that you can make that happen, but there are steps that people have to take. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, one of them is I believe in clarity and specificity. The more you're clear and specific on your talents, and the flip side where you're not, the more you might see situations, markets that people are trying to serve, new markets they might be entering, what's missing in their company that might leverage more value or visibility to their current customers and prospects. So then when you do that, writing about those situations, if you're prone to writing, is helpful. Or citing them when you're talking to customers. Say, just as so-and-so does this and this company does this, we fill in the gap in between, and we think we want to meet the high standard they do. Specifically citing the benefits of companies that you might want to be in or how to serve situations makes people more aware of you. I think it's good to also be proactive and be on the lookout for leaders in companies that you admire and say, that's a company I like. I like what they're doing. I like the way they do that. I wonder if there's a way my talents could serve them. So there are ways to be proactive, but also, of course, ways to be clear and concrete and specific when you're being interviewed.
Tell us more about examples of that. If someone goes to professional association. They see people who are those kinds of leaders you described a moment ago, and they think they can be of help to them, or they're not sure how they can be of help. Let's break that into two parts. First of all, they know they want to be of service to someone. How can they figure out how they could be beneficial to them, and then how might they do that?
Well, first of all, is to learn a little bit about what that person does well, or something where you think there's a gap for them. And say to them when you're at a conference or a social gathering, say, I've long admired your capacity to do this, and I wonder if we could talk a bit about it, because I have a shared interest in serving that market or in that situation. And I want to give you some suggestions and see what you thought of them. I'd love your candid advice, frankly. What if? And then if they say that, say, what about this? What if we did that? So for recently, I'm a big fan of analytics geeks, for example. And I think there are certain occupations where there's growth, and there's certainly one of them. If they say, I notice you have a great product. I notice that you get a lot of good testimonials. That shows you're doing a lot of things right. Would you be interested in exploring how to understand more deeply the profile of the kind of customer you serve, the traits they have in common, both as it relates to your product, but also in other parts of their life? For example, I found out with a team I work with of analytics geeks that surgeons happen to like fine wine, and male surgeons especially, and they also like certain lines of clothing when they're out of the hospital. So when the analytics said, we found this out about the profile of the customers you're serving, these surgeons, can we propose that we join with your marketing people to find efficient ways to reach them in other unexpected places, and to perhaps partner with some of the organizations that reach them in those situations so you can stand out more? So they were coming at it differently. Or thinking about a nursery. I'm working with a nursery. There's 5 outlets. And I suggested to them, stand out. Not only sell plants, but offer 3 options to keep your business growing. Offer to sell the service of people who will plant the plants for them, whether it's for an individual organization, or to create a landscape design that can go with the plants, and or provide regular maintenance plus suggestions of when to add what kinds of plants to their business landscaping or their home. So that way, the person who offering that, they may be a landscaper, they may be someone who's just seeking more work at a basic level planting plants. I admire the people say, let me help you differentiate your product by what I can do to help you. So that was just 2 examples.
Those are great examples. And what I like about those, as you were talking, is you're thinking about the needs of the person you want to help, and thinking about the services they might require. And whether it's you're running a business and you're trying to identify the needs of potential or current clients and how you might need them, or you're looking for work and you want to connect with a potential employer, it all comes back to the needs of the person you want to have that relationship with and how you can help meet them.
That's very well put. I call it triangling, triangle talk. First referring to you, say, is this an interest of yours? Or I noticed you're doing this. Am I on target? May we talk about something in a way I think I know a person who could help you, or I could? So it's you, me, and then us, which is increasingly rare in our culture, by the way.
Well, I think making those connections with others and being a kind of broker can make a huge difference. You've written about the work of Adam Grant, a professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, and about the value of giving to others without any expectation of getting something in return. And you've talked about that in your book, Mutuality. Can you tell us more about the book, the main idea? And I know you've got some practical steps in that book that you share with readers about how they can act on that idea.
I'd be glad to. And one of the things that's important about Adam is he said givers are among the least and most successful. So it's how you give. Because one of my hot buttons, which I'm trying to work on, are people who are unhelpful givers. They give something that clearly demonstrates they don't really know you. And so you try to act genial back. But in Mutuality Matters, I believe the future in our increasingly connected world is to cultivate relationships with people who have complementary talents around sweet spots of mutual interest. And the more you do that, you'll have more lenses on a situation. You can innovate faster. You can see an opportunity or solve a problem better. And in that attitude, you don't do it just when there's a crisis. You do it ahead of time. You can, in effect, become what Joe Calloway calls a category of one, where you're the only person that combines a strength that's somewhat unique with a network of people where you can call on them and they will call on you. It's not quid pro quo, but it's an ebb and flow of mutuality over time. And thus, you can stand out wherever you are at any level of a large company or small one. That's why I like intranets, by the way, for companies, because an intranet is an internet within a company. And a lot of them have been badly designed, so it looks like more work. But when it's done right, and this just makes my heart sing, when you can ask for help internally from each other, you see who keeps asking for help but doesn't ever get asked for help. And you see who's most helpful. Again, going back to Adam, he said, it's not leaders we should look for in an organization, but who offers the most helpful assist most often. They provide the assistance that people want. They add the missing link. They help become the glue that holds group together. And that, I think, is increasingly what individuals need and organizations need to stay agile. So doing that is in your enlightened self-interest. And I also think it makes for less conflict and more conviviality when you're speaking to a part of someone, say, you can do this. Like, I'm a fast thinker. My business partner is a slow thinker. Doesn't mean we're smart and dumb. I'm an extrovert in some situation. He's an introvert. We're now realizing the reverse may be true. But we can do and see things that the other person can't, and vice versa. So that's my wordy way of saying why I like mutuality. It also makes it fun because you say, oh my gosh, I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, but like our skills and our weaknesses can complement others when we're part of a team. I wanted to get back to your book, and you had talked about specific ways in the book that people can promote mutuality. Can you tell us more about some of those steps?
I think the first thing in promoting mutuality is to speak to the side of someone you most like and admire, especially when they're not demonstrating it. Because it's not how people feel about us when they first meet. It's how they feel about themselves. And I think citing to 2 or 3 other people, one of my favorites, a thing that 3 unexpected allies could do together around a sweet spot, means they often will like the experience they have on one action, and they'll like you for making it happen. So those are 2 ways to spur mutuality and where they're more likely to be pulled towards you and think of you. If you give enough other people what they need in their life, you often get what you need, even before you know you need it, from people you sometimes didn't think could provide it. And I think that makes for a productive and satisfying life in mutuality.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Well, we'll include links to your book and to the 2 authors you mentioned as well. Thank you for joining us today, Kare.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I love your notion online of work backwards. I call it reverse engineering. Have that end goal in mind for you and your team.
Well, thank you. Well, you can find Kare online at her blog, Moving From Me to We, and at her website, sayitbetter.com. We'll include links to both of these sites in the show notes. Thank you again for joining us today, Kare.
I was honored, Mac. Thank you, and thank the team.
We're back in the Max List studio with Ben and Cecilia. So what do you 2 think? What are some of the most important points you heard Kare make?
I really like the idea she put out there that there's a huge professional value to networks, and not just for advancing your own career, but as a service in and of themselves. And one of the key ideas here is that your unique skills and your ability to bring in other people with their own unique and complementary skill sets, that's a huge asset for a professional for solving problems on the fly. And it's something, frankly, we don't think about our networks like that very often, but we should.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. I think each of us is a kind of impresario or broker person who knows lots of people with skills and can bring folks together to solve problems. And when we do that, it does create opportunities for us.
And there's a value added for being that person who can bring everyone else together.
Right.
Your last point, that's what I took away from the most, thinking about who's the most helpful around you. And if you are that person that's providing the most value and help, then you really stand out and are someone people are always thinking about.
I liked her point also about, she called it intranets, and a lot of organizations have those. But there's also a lot of communications tools out there. One is called Slack, it's like a chat tool that organizations use so their teams can collaborate openly. Mm-hmm. And the idea that when you put it out there into your network that I need help with problem X, and other folks jump in and address that problem for you, that mutuality there, that give and take of each person contributing their unique skills, that's where the magic happens. And the more we can facilitate that process through technology and through our own willingness to embrace that, the better results we're going to have, both professionally, personally, and for our organizations.
I agree. And as Kare said, it definitely makes your work life a little bit more fun.
Well, thank you both. And thank you, our listeners. We'll be back next week with more tools and tips you can use to find that dream job. In the meantime, visit us at maxlist.org, where you can sign up for our free newsletter. It comes out every Tuesday, and there are more than 100 new jobs every week. And if you like what you hear on the show, please let us know by taking a moment to visit iTunes and leave a rating and review. The benefit of that is that it helps us help others, because the more ratings and reviews we receive, the higher we rise in the iTunes charts and the more people learn about the show. Thank you for listening.